executive or business leader that I feel like is making inroads to more Black people coming into the space and finding success. This week I have with me a man who I've recently had the opportunity to be introduced to, and I'm excited to talk through his story in cannabis. The CEO of Loud, Mr. Jesce Horton. How you doing today, my brother?
What's up, Andrew? I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, hey man, it's an honor for us to have a conversation. You know, it's not many of us in the space, and I randomly came across your profile on LinkedIn about a month and a half ago, and I was just thoroughly impressed by your resume, what you've accomplished, the work you've done in the space, and above all of that, how humble you are. You know, so I wanted to just extend the olive branch and have a conversation around the work that you've been doing, because you know, for one, I sincerely applaud it, but for two, I think it'll inspire anybody who takes the time to hear it out. So I would love for you to start off, you know, before we jump into cannabis, just what was your professional backstory and kind of how did you get started in business?
Yeah, man. So actually, it's crazy. I when I started out in school, I was a horrible math student. I used to make B's and sometimes F's when I was in middle school, early high school, and I started actually consuming cannabis when I was 15. And I think maybe I had some level of ADHD to where I really couldn't just sit down and focus on the problem, right? So when I was smoking, then go study, somehow I was able to really pick it up. So I went from already being the D student in math to being an A student by the time I graduated. And because I was good in math, I decided to be an engineer. I went off to Florida State. In that process, I was arrested a few times for cannabis, lost my scholarship, dropped out of school, got back in, ultimately, graduated with an engineering degree, and then jumped out into industry, man, for about 7 years before I jumped into cannabis.
Okay, I would love to get a little bit of backstory on just, you know, where did you grow up at and kind of what was the climate of cannabis around that time?
Man, I grew up in the South. I live in the Pacific Northwest now. I've been there for almost 10 years. I consider it home, but definitely born and raised in the South, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. So I mean, if anybody from that area knows that cannabis, is real. I guess it seemed to be one of the main targets for people, right, to get arrested, to get caught in the system. It was almost an automatic, right? They pull you over, they smell cannabis. It was just really hard from a law enforcement standpoint. And I think from a community standpoint, the same way. My dad actually went to prison for 7 years in North Carolina for cannabis arrest before he ultimately went back to school and graduated. So they tried to keep me away from cannabis. I mean, hard. And my dad would drug test me when I got home from high school sometimes. My mom was like a eagle eye, trying to look at my eyes and see if I was smoking. So it was tough, dealing with kind of the community, law enforcement, even at home, as it related to cannabis and cannabis use.
I'm from Alabama, so I feel like I'm talking to myself in this conversation, but I would love for you to give us your insight on just growing up in that environment. And ironically, on July 1st, Virginia's cannabis program just went live. So, you know, as a resident who grew up during the prison pipeline, uh, how does it feel to see it now turn into this huge industry?
Man, it's surreal, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like I remember having those conversations with my homeboys, back in the day, right? It'll never be legal. They'll never make it legal because of this, because of that. It just won't happen. Maybe not in our lifetime, maybe in, when my kids are older, you're having all those conversations. So to see how fast it's progressing and then kind of to be at the center of it in a lot of ways, I mean, I feel like I'm living a dream, and I think just trying to kind of, wake up every day and pinch myself, but there's a lot more to be done, a long way to go.
Yeah, of course. And I want to jump into now, you know, your loud brand, which you're famous for throughout the industry, and you're scaling it in a way that's honestly impressive. You know, how did the brand come about? You know, what was your process of putting it together and kind of what's the overarching goal for it?
Yeah, man. So we've done a lot of work on branding, man, just because I feel like I represent and, our crew represents a really important part of cannabis culture that I think is getting left behind in a lot of ways, right? As the industry grows, we're moving away from what generally is seen as taboo cannabis culture. But, to us, that's who we are. We know that that's still the predominant, buyer that's going into the dispensaries, the people that are buying an ounce, not just a pre-roll. And that's who we're speaking to when we select our products. But that's also who we're speaking to when we developed our brand. And kind of the intersection of our brand really is this beautiful, epic outdoor culture that's really evolving, especially in our community, as well as this urban culture, and kind of like how it collides in a city like Portland, Oregon. So that's really where we're focused. And I think that in our community, in our demographic, that whole idea is almost a phenomenon in a lot of different ways of us stepping outside of the box and doing a lot of different dope shit, right? And how it collides and how it intersects with cannabis. So that's who we are, man. And my whole team is really focused on kind of speaking for that voice. And it's easy when you are that demographic, man. This Portland, Oregon type of environment is just amazing when you think about cannabis culture.
So my next question would be, as somebody from the South like myself, what was the culture shock once you got out to the West Coast and you saw that it's entirely different from what we grew up seeing, or what people's opinion of it is?
Man, I mean, I think you're always going to have a different perspective based on how you come into stuff, right? So I'm not going to speak from the Portland, Oregon perspective or from the Pacific, West Coast. I think in general, West Coast to me is just more of a focus on quality of life, more of a focus on happiness, not really keeping up with the Joneses, doing things right for you, and that uniqueness, kind of embracing that, especially in Portland. So that was different to me, as opposed to really kind of being a little bit more traditional, conservative in the South, where it's like, if you want this, you got to have this. If you're this type of person, you got to look like this. So I think that was more the shock West Coast type of environment. And to me, me coming into it from a cannabis perspective, I mean, when I first got out here, I was still with Siemens, with my engineering company. And I went to the dispensary and bought a clone and bought bud from every single dispensary I could find, because I was just so excited about finally having that freedom. So that really opened me up and made me embrace everything about the city and about the culture, because I was able to live, I think, my truth and enjoy cannabis and my love for cannabis and the diversity of it and the culture. So really, I love it here. That's why I say I consider it home.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I want to touch on is you saying you coming into cannabis from engineering. I always preach to anybody who will listen, especially people who look like us, your skills are transferable. Even if not directly, some of the tenets of it or the philosophies of what you did before will translate over to cannabis. So how did being an engineer equip you to find so much success in our space?
Damn, man. I mean, yeah, I've actually heard you say that before in some of your other podcasts. And it's so true, man. It's like, when I went to, when I first got to Portland and I was thinking about the industry, really, I just wanted to learn about growing. So I went to this kind of consulting, kind of grow like classes, almost like Oaksterdam in Oakland, but it was here in Portland. And as they're going through all the slides, talking about growing, I'm sitting there with a group of about 10 people, and they went to one slide, and they were like, these are all the different industries that are working with cannabis currently, right? And then they look at, marketing, blah, blah, blah. It was just all kind of businesses. I'm like, wow. And, I did engineering, but also focused on business development, right? Within energy and environmental efficiency. And within that whole realm of thinking, it's like, how do you develop a business? How do you understand the market? How do you take advantage? How do you beat your competition? How do you differentiate? So as I'm looking at this slide, I'm thinking like, wow, look at all those opportunities to differentiate and create value in this market. And then he went to the next slide, Andrew, and it was like, it said, these are all the industries that will eventually work with the cannabis industry. And it was like 10 times, more industries. And I'm like, wow, that's what really blew me away. I'm like, man, that's crazy. So, I didn't notice it at the time, but I'm utilizing all of my engineering background as I'm designing my grow room. Even when I started with my basement, what I mean? We had water cooled lights because I couldn't find a way to get the AC cool enough, right? Without adding more AC, I didn't have that money. So I brought in water cooled lights and a water chiller that circulated, cold water as the air blew over the lights. So it was an AC, not just for the lights, but also for the whole room. So there was all kind of little things and things you can implement, things you could do and learn about, especially at that time when there wasn't a lot of different technology options and there weren't a lot of people who studied all these things and there weren't all these consultants that were out there, right? So that really gave me an opportunity to utilize that critical thinking, that facility design, ergonomics, all those things into a facility as small as that, as a basement, and then all the way up until where I am now. I mean, we have, I believe, the world's first ergonomically designed trim room. I think one of the most advanced curing rooms in the industry that you'll see. So we brought in a lot of innovation from that same perspective into this market, into this grow room, and we're able to do things that even the most well-funded companies don't understand or won't take the risk in doing because there's no book on it, right? So in this market, if you're able to utilize what you know and what you understand and what you can feel and touch to add value, you'll be surprised at how many people need the value so that they can differentiate what they're doing.
Man, you should have a show of your own, bro. I can tell you have a wealth of knowledge, honestly, man. And another thing I want to touch on is you even speaking on the logistics of success in the space is just as important in cannabis to be purpose driven. It's funny because I tell people this isn't just a normal packaged good to where you can just make it fun or cool. People, because of the history of the criminalization of it, we want to see a progressive brand on shelves, right? So you do great work in that lane also. So tell us a little bit about some of the projects you're working on, such as New Leaf, where you're figuring out how to employ, empower, and inform people as well as grow your company.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's so true, bro. In this market, and I think that's what makes it an opportunity like no other industry. I always say, people would be like, we want to be an industry. We're trying to create an industry, and I think that's great. This was, back in 2012, and as things, things have been going for even longer than that, right? But that's when really things started really pushing. People were like, we got to create an industry, and that's great. We got an industry. It's about creating a better industry, not just another industry. If we just create just another industry, we will lose a major opportunity when we look back at it. So, because of the fact that, like you said, the criminal justice history of cannabis, the wellness history and imprint of cannabis, the fact that it's a plant and we're growing a plant that is a herb, right? You've got all these, I think, intrinsic grassroots type of philosophies and I think things that had to really advocate for, right, and are non-traditional. And if you go at it with this traditional type of perspective, you're losing and you're leaving behind some of the people that really made a way for us. So in this industry, you have got to be purpose driven, I think, in order to really maximize your opportunity. People are going to come in and create a dope product and make money, right? I mean, period. You don't have to do it to make money, but to maximize your opportunity in this market and to maximize the opportunity of the industry to grow as big as it can possibly grow, we've got to have a lot of that stuff put in. And I think because of my history with cannabis, my arrests, and how it affected my life and put me into a depression at some level, the way that it affected my dad and so many people in my family, there is no way that I can get into this industry and only focus on the money or only focus on what I love more than anything is the bud, right? Is the beautiful buzz, man. So I have to be involved with these other aspects, and that just helps me and helps my business more, just because it's in me and it's who I am. And I think that as the industry grows, people are going to find, not just the criminal justice aspect, but the wellness aspect, the mother aspect, all these different things, right, that intersect with cannabis. The companies that are speaking for people other than just a consumer are going to really make waves, because as you and I know, and what I say, cannabis is one of the most widely used products of any non-essential, if you can, even though it is essential now, but non-essential in a sense, right, product, not toothpaste, not toilet paper. If you look at all these products, right, cannabis is used by so many different people, different types of people, people who believe this, people who believe that, people with different backgrounds. So I think that if you're only just focused on cannabis, you're losing all these other things that really pull this whole industry together and kind of the glue that keeps us together.
Agree 100%. And coming back on like some grassroots stuff, because I'm someone from the deep south, and you are as well, and it's really hard for people where we're from, especially who don't have, to find new opportunities and instances to have some type of economic or social growth. And cannabis is that now, right? Medically, it just passed in Alabama, right? Virginia just went live. So what advice would you give to that black person who's capable of getting into the space, but they're like, okay, I saw the press release, but what now? What do I do next? What advice would you give to those people who want to come into the space back home?
Man, oh, bro, I've heard you say this a couple times as well, and really trying to express the urgency, like understand the massive opportunity that's in front of us. And when we started Minority Cannabis Business Association, my first nonprofit, the reason was because exactly, I think what you're doing here is because the more we can show people that there are people who are successful, the more they can reach out and touch you and email you and hear these things people are talking about, the more likely it's going to happen, right? I mean, we can create pipelines and we can create funds, and that's great, but people aren't going to ever go out and jump on that if they don't believe that they can do it and really think it's possible. And I think that's what I would tell people, man, is it's possible. It's a massive opportunity. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like, just because you're not at the table that you won't have a chance. Don't feel like the white man has it all and they're keeping us all out. Man, y'all just don't even understand. I was one of the guys who was scared to jump into business as a whole, business on my own, because I was a corporate guy. You know what I mean? And once I did that and realized the massive of, if you have value, you can win in any business. A fucking nail shop. I said, if I lose in cannabis, I'll be the George Jefferson of the hood in Portland, because I don't care. I'll do whatever it is because you can add value. And understanding that with any market, even the smallest, markets, understand that with the fastest growing market in the world. I mean, you can't be overwhelmed, man, and you can't get down on yourself, and you got to take advantage of every single day that you have in front of you before things pop, and you got to be at the table making sure you understand the laws and are helping to implement or helping to push things that will help your business and your case.
I agree 100%. I tell everybody it's not hard work. It's just a lot of work. It's just figuring out, one foot in front of the other, being a student of it, because in reality, I don't think any of us know what's going on in cannabis. It's moving too quickly. Anybody who tells you, oh, I'm a cannabis expert, or, or I'm a master grower, like, just walk away, because they're about to give you some bad information. So I concur 100%. And I would love for you to kind of give us an outlook on, with all of this new growth and new opportunity, where do you plan to take Loud in the future?
Yeah, man, gosh, you spoke to it directly, and that things are moving so fast. And what I try to be more than anything, man, and what I've learned from, my first step in jumping into the industry, I wanted to have a dispensary, which I'm sure everyone wanted, right? Having a dispensary, because it seems to be the thing, And if I would have gotten that, then I would have been in trouble. You know what I mean? I definitely wouldn't be where I am today or have the opportunity to help, have 20 employees, all those things, right? If I had retail. So I try to be water, man. I try to just really approach everything as systematically as possible, do all my homework, understand what opportunities are presented, and then figure out where I can add value, right? The most, right? Not necessarily just what I want to do, because I'm in cannabis, so damn it, I want to do almost everything. But where can I really add value and help to differentiate and take things to a new level is how I really approach things. And the way I see it now, man, is really focusing on production here in Oregon, here in a state with low cost, really great opportunity, the ability to build a brand that's really meaningful from a cultivation and growing standpoint in the Pacific Northwest. That's my main goal, is to build this production as best I can, fine tune everything and have it like a well-oiled machine. Right now, we have a new facility where we're doing actually all different licenses: retail, production, processing, and hopefully social consumption. So I'm going to focus heavily on that. And then, maybe some more retail locally eventually. Maybe, if things open up from different, from interstate commerce, and I'll start to open up accounts in different cities and states and sell more loud there and help to grow the brand. There's potential of licensing opportunities that I've spoken about. So there's a lot of amazing things, man. I think there's probably about 10 different avenues that I would be thrilled to jump into. But really, it really comes down to that, bro. Like, where can I add value? Not just where can I make most money, not just where can I, do the thing that's coolest that I can talk about and that people would be impressed by, but where can I, say that I can really come in and do some real work that takes things to another level. And with that, everything else just comes.
Man, it's like I'm talking to myself. It's I tell everyone you can't come into cannabis expecting to be a millionaire in 6 months or 12 months because it's so capital intensive. It's such a huge learning curve. Even if you sold cannabis in the traditional market, just the rules and regulations are so different in this space, how you can market, how you can advertise. So you really have to come into it, as you said, as a student, being able to challenge your own beliefs and your own ideas consistently, to better position yourself. But my last question would be for you. How do you feel about federal legalization? Do you think that's going to put, people like us in a better position, or do you not think it's well structured enough for people of color?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of important decisions to be made when you look at federal legalization. When looking at the MORE Act, and as things were put at, a lot of us activists, really saw, and I'm a business owner right first, but like I said, advocacy is just ingrained in me, really saw that the way things are being set up would not be in favor for small businesses, right? And I think that first and foremost, there's the equity piece, but then I think before that is this small business piece. And without the focus on small business, I don't care what equity you do, it won't help as many people. For example, if you have a limited license state where you've only got 10 licenses, and fuck it, they don't, they say we're going to give 100% of these licenses. We're going to do the most far-reaching thing ever and give 100. Nobody else is getting in but equity owners. Then great, you created 10 millionaires. You know what I mean? But what about the guys like me who maybe didn't have the connections, maybe didn't have the money, maybe didn't have the things to be of that 10, who still had a massive amount of value to add to the market, who consumers still valued their product, valued their perspective, can help to take things to another level as far as the growth of the industry. So I think because I was in Oregon and the focus is on small business and there is no equity laws here, right? We have to fix that. But because the focus was on small business, I was able to kind of inch in. And I started at 2012, and I'm just now really kind of making some traction. So as it relates to the business stuff, done a lot of nonprofit, but it takes so long that even a guy who has a lot of value needs to kind of inch in sometimes and needs a lot of work and needs to kind of build his facility with 8 lights and then go to 16 and then go to, you know what I mean? So we have to make room for those people and those small businesses, which will help more people like me than even just an equity law. So I think that federal legalization doesn't seem, the MORE Act and the way things are moving don't seem to be squarely focused on small business and making sure that this is an opportunity that is an economic opportunity for all Americans, as opposed to just a few of us who have gotten a chance to, lucky enough to get our foot in the door. I think that I'm concerned about that first and foremost. And I think that there's a lot of other things that we have to discuss as far as funding for, the small businesses, right? They're looking at using the U.S. Small Business Administration, I think, which has funded, I think, 0 Black small businesses last year and very few previously. And that's the arm that the MORE Act is saying they're going to give the money to for funding. So there's a lot of worrisome things in there that need to be ironed out and figured out. Ultimately, I feel extremely optimistic about it because, as we mentioned, no matter how many barriers there are in there, there are still opportunities for us to find our way in and to win big. And we need to be focused on those, trying to enact change in these barriers, but don't get caught up in these barriers. If you're trying to get past them, you got to look at all these other avenues and opportunities. So I think that's going to be open for us.
Yeah, and the reality is they're not going to pass perfect legislation and they're not going to pass thoughtful legislation. They will pass legislation though. So, to your point, it's all about just being able to adapt to it and understand that, that's the reality of it. But lastly, my brother, I would love for you to give our viewers an idea of where they can follow you and your company, if they have any questions or insight, or if they just want to reach out to you.
Yeah, dope, man. Thank you all. You can find us on Instagram. That's our primary, at The Loud, at THELOWD. The dude with LOWD, Loud, won't give it up. If you know him, please tell him to hit us up. We've been trying for years. The company is Loud, but the Instagram is The Loud, and you can find me on all the platforms. Jesce Horton, JESCEHORTON. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Man,
so
I
much.
appreciate you. You're a true light in the space. Like I said, it feels like it's only about 30 of us in it. So, you know, it's beautiful to hear your story and you being a living, breathing example of progress, you know, and just not having unrealistic expectations, understanding that you had setbacks along the way, but you're in a great position now, and you're gonna be in an even better position next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing your growth, my brother.
You too, man. You too, bro. Let's definitely build together.